So without further ado, I want to welcome a new reader to Delvin. This is his first time. I've been harping at him for the last 4 years. I know he's a very, very busy man, so obviously he couldn't come down. So this year, he finally said yes to me, and I'm glad to have him here. So I want to welcome Senator David Norris onto stage, please.
I think it's absolutely marvellous to be here. I've already got a punnet of beautiful strawberries from a Frenchman outside. I got 6 Primulars in my window box, and I couldn't resist this. It's a lovely old Victorian book, €1, counting my aunts, my great aunts, my mother used to read, and it says 3 people, the Pansy book. So how could I possibly resist? And then to hear Éamonn Lawlor, and thank you so much, Éamonn, for all the work you've done with Lyric FM. I was listening to Lyric just before I came down, and it was absolutely terrific. And then my old pal and sometime impresario Gaeilge, Manchán Magan, reading that wonderful piece. We had a bit of Joyce first, then this wonderful new novel with the kind of early monastic colonic irrigation and whatnot. It was really fantastic. Now, I'm going to lower the tone considerably because I'm going to read you from my book, which is called A Kick Against the Pricks. And it was banned by RTE because of the title. Because you see, some people are dirty-minded old gits with absolutely no cultural reference whatever, and if they had, they would have realised that this is a quotation from the Acts of the Apostle, Acts 26:14. And when they were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. Well, okay, they may not have read the Bible, but they might have heard of Euripides, the Bacchae. Being enraged, I would kick against the pricks. Or Plautus, the great Latin comedian. If you strike against the pricks with your fist, you hurt your hand more than the pricks. And, of course, there's also our own Samuel Beckett, Nick Cave, not to speak of the irreplaceable late Johnny Cash. So apparently they have no cultural reference whatever, but I give my own definition. Of course I was aware of the naughty meaning. That's the whole point of it. But it's not the primary meaning. And prick I define as a kind of sharpened goad used to prod oxen in what those in control considered the correct direction, was from ancient times a source of metaphor. I also use it in full consciousness of its double entendre as a metaphor for my lifelong struggle against the establishment. The prologue takes up an image that came to me very clearly when I was at Christmas and I was looking out and I saw this incident. Just in case I dry up, it's very unlikely, never happened before, but I might. Christmas 2010 was a childhood dream in Dublin, a real white Christmas. The snow around lay thick and deep and cast an unusual mantle of pristine purity even over the north inner city. A young, newly engaged couple living temporarily in a flat across the street from my house took the opportunity to build a wonderful, traditional, larger-than-life snowman. He had a battered hat, a little black eyes of coal, a carrot nose and orange peel mouth. I even seem to remember a small, tattered scarf. Beside him was built from snow, like the blocks of an igloo, a throne on which the young couple photographed each other. Other people drifting up the street also took the opportunity. There was a sense of happiness and celebration. I went back inside for my camera and took a few snaps myself. Then, up the street came the sound of what might be taken as merriment. The nasal voices of 3 teenage girls united inharmoniously in the chorus of a pop song. Then they spotted the snowman. First of all, like everyone else, they took a few photographs on their telephones, but quickly the playfulness turned nasty. One of them knocked the hat off. Then the nose was tweaked away. The most adventurous of the three started shoving at the head until, with the help of her two accomplices, she pushed it over to the ground. Then a frenzy of destruction took place, until the only remnants of the snowman were a scatter of smeared lumps. It was apparently only the human form that attracted their instinct for vandalism. The throne lay isolated, unoccupied. As they passed the bewildered creators of the image, one of them sneered, "We killed your fucking snowman for you, mister." It was a sad moment, but an illustrative one. One frequently hears it said that there are two kinds of people, good and bad, the ugly and the beautiful, the vivacious and the dull, and so on. But it seemed to me on that early Christmastide evening that there are also two kinds of personalities. One to whom the arrival of something that bespeaks creativity and the positive find themselves drawn towards it to join in the fun, while the other force is a sinister instinct, equally attracted, drawn to everything that is positive, however, not to celebrate, but instead to enjoy the thrill of destruction. When I started teaching in Trinity, I was an undergraduate one day, a graduate the next, on the staff the day afterwards, and with typical adherence to the Trinity doctrine of inappropriateness, make people do the most inappropriate thing they can think of, I, who am totally prosaic, was left giving a series of lectures on poetry. And I had great difficulty with this, but I broke it down. I had to examine what exactly was meant by poetry. Was it the sound? Was it the shape? So I had some poems like E. Cummings that had no sound at all, they were just typographical poems. I had some like George Herbert, Easter Wings, that had the shape of the angel's wings if you turned up and looked at it. But I was still hovering. I couldn't make up my mind really what poetry was, but particularly with Joyce, when you get to Finnegan's Wake. It's so close to poetry, and it's so much not propositional sense. And I explained this to Brendan Kennelly, and this is just very briefly a story he told me and its consequences. I discussed my academic angst about this with Brendan Kennelly, and he told me the story of a similar discourse with Brendan Behan, who recounted the following limerick to unravel the conundrum. There was a young fella called Rollins, who worked for Ferrier Pollux. As he walked by the strand, with a girl by his hand, the tide came up to his knees. Now, said the playwright, that is prose. But if the tide had come up another 18 inches, it would have been poetry. And that story always went down well in lectures. And like many Dubliners, I have my own story about Brendan Behan, although this one recalls an actual rather than a fictional encounter. When I was 15 or 16, there was a public discussion on theatre with John B. Keane and Brendan, held in the Shelbourne Hotel as part of the Dublin Theatre Festival. We all went along expecting Brendan to be plastered, but his wife Beatrice had managed to impose some discipline, so he entered the room looking $1 million in a new tuxedo, white shirt, bow tie, and smoking an enormous Havana cigar. The discussion between Brendan and John B. was fascinating. At the beginning, we'd been asked to write down any questions we might wish to ask and submit them to the organisers. I wrote mine down and handed it up. Brendan scrutinised it, and in his lovely Dublin drawl said, "Judging by the handwriting, I say this question comes from a well-educated young convent girl," which showed his skills in both graphology and psychology. Now, she's asked me to say what I think of the critics. I have only one thing to say, darling. The critic is like a eunuch in a harem. He sees the job done every night, but is unable to do it himself. And I'll tell you a story that isn't in the book. And it was told to me by Ken Monaghan, whose uncle was James Joyce, who wrote Ulysses. And he told me this story about a farmer who, in the 1950s, wanted to build a bathroom extension in his little farmhouse. And he went to the local bank, and the bank manager said, "Well, £100 is rather a lot of money, but I'm afraid I don't have the authority here in this branch, but I can take a few notes and make a recommendation, but I'll have to ask you a few questions if that's all right." The old farmer said, "That's all right." Well, he said, the bank manager, I'm not sure if this is in the book, by the way, it might be. He said, are you married? Oh, yes. Do you own your own house? Well, I kind of own it, but I have a bit of a mortgage on it already. But it's nearly paid off. Do you have children? Oh, yes, I have 2 daughters. That's why I need the bathroom, because, you know, they want to primp and make themselves up before they go out. So at the end of it, the bank manager said, well, that's fine, thank you very much. That all seems to be satisfactory. And I do believe I'll be able to make this recommendation for you. So, good afternoon. The old farmer said, no. He said, not so fast. He said, you asked me an awful lot of questions. So, do you mind if I turn the tables and ask you a question in return? Well, the bank manager said, well, it's a bit unusual, but I suppose there's nothing wrong with it. He said, all right. She said, well, now, he said, are you married? Oh, yes. Do you have children? Oh, yes, I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Do you own your own house? Oh, yes. The bank is very helpful. I've paid off the mortgage. Do you have a bathroom? Yes, I have 2 bathrooms. And the old farmer said, well, do you mind me asking, how often do you take a bath? And the bank manager said, well, that's a bit personal, isn't it? I sort of resent that. The old farmer said, well, it might well be personal. But on the other hand, if you're expecting me to lick your arse for 50 quid, I'm at least entitled to know the condition in which you keep it. And I remember some years ago we were dealing with the finance bill in the Senate, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I thought nobody would be watching. So I told that story, and it appeared on a Rocktors report the next night, and I was distraught.